48 years ago, I was adopted at birth. And in my last video, I mentioned that I had recently met my biological family and kind of took you through a little bit of that process and how I had faced that fear of meeting them. And it was an awesome experience. And like I said in my last video, I'm getting to know them. I'm excited about it. And yeah, it's pretty cool. And since I started making these videos, I've had numerous conversations with people about my background, their background, adoption and the things that I've gone through and things that they've gone through. We've shared back and forth. They've come from phone calls, text messages, direct messages. It's pretty cool, man. And I jotted some stuff down because I get questions and I want to answer them right away, but I don't always have the time to answer them right away. But one of the things that I kind of discussed with a couple different people was that fear that I was talking about. Like, how did I face that fear of meeting my biological family? Because like I mentioned in the last video, like for years, I wanted to take that step and I never did. And so how did I overcome that fear of something that was like a hurtful part for me for a while? I did heal from it. And then finally taking that next step into trying to figure out where I came from. And yeah. So for me, it stems back to the story I mentioned, and maybe one of the first videos I made about dunking for the first time. And I'll recap the story a little bit. We were at basketball practice. We were running the two lines, and if you know anything, if you ever played basketball or you ever watched basketball, there's normally two layup lines, and you're going in and layups on the left or right, whatever side you're doing it from. And at that age, everybody wants to dunk, so you're trying to dunk, and I was very, very, very unsuccessful in attempting. And so I had a friend on the team, Andre Boggs, who Andre seemed like he was dunking since he was like 3 years old. And people who know Andre has been dunking forever. And so we're at practice and Andre says to me, "Roger, taking off too close to the rim, you got to take off from further away." Now it didn't make sense to me. Like, you're trying to dunk a ball, why would you take off from further away? It didn't make sense. But he's been doing it for forever, so I've never done it on a 10-foot court. So I take off from further away. I try, I miss, but something changed. Like it was closer than it was the way I was doing it. And so then the next time around, I get the ball and I take off from a little further away, and then I do dunk it. And like I said before, everybody cheered for me. Everybody was hyped. And then the next day, in just whatever random drill we were doing, 3-man weave, whatever it was, I could just dunk, and I could just dunk with ease. And it became easier and easier to the point where I probably got a couple victims watching this. Whether you went to Kutztown with me or in Summer League or playing in Downingtown or whatever, I've dunked on quite a few people. But what I want you to really see from that story, and I mentioned before that for me it was more than the dunk. It was, hold up, I didn't know that was in there. And it took for Andre to see something in me and say it. And once he said it and helped me with it, I was able to do it. And then I was able to do it with ease. And he had planted a seed in me, right? That allowed me to see myself differently. And that moment in life, I come back to often because I didn't know what was in me. I didn't know I had the ability to do that. I wanted to do that, but I didn't believe that I could do that. And it took something from the outside to help me to bring out something that was in me. And often I go back to that moment at basketball practice when I dunked for the first time because it was so impactful in so many different ways. And it was an outside influence that helped bring out something in me that that I didn't know yet. And so that concept often comes back to my mind. Now, remember, I'm this adopted kid who feels thrown away and abandoned and just low on myself. And there was this thought that came to me. I guess I was probably 19, maybe 20. And the thought was, the deeper the root, the greater the tree. And it was just a thought that passed my mind. I'm like, deeper root, greater tree. And it just kept ringing in my head over the years. And I started to research it a little bit, and I just started to learn how, we see the trees outside and we see, the fruits of the trees, whether it's an apple tree or whatever. But they all start with a seed and they grow down before they grow up. And what I had in me was, I'd say, a negative tree. I had this belief in myself that I was thrown away and I wasn't good enough, because why else would my mother and my father just give up on me? That was the negative belief that I had. And so how do I change that? And I literally, I went back to that practice the first time I dunked, and how an outside influence helped me change the belief in myself. And then people started to see the fruit of the belief in myself. Yeah, we were at practice in Coatesville in the gym, and then my belief changed in myself, and that carried me to every court I went to every time I played. And so oftentimes I would be playing there, but you better watch Roger dunk on you. You better watch that. I mean, I would, but people started to see the fruit of something that had changed inside of me. And that change inside of me, it affected me in a positive way. So I went back to that thought, and the deeper the root, the greater the tree. And I started to say, okay, I've got to change how I feel about myself, because this is not working for me. And so what I did was, I used to listen to music all the time, riding in my car. And I knew, back when I was a kid, from Biggie Smalls to Jay-Z to Nas and all, I knew all these lyrics to all these songs. And I thought to myself, man, I got to change myself. And so instead of listening to music all the time, and my friends would tell you, my close friends would tell you, I would have just positive, back then it was CDs or tapes or books or something that was positive to help change how I felt inside. Now, I don't know if anybody really knew what I was doing. Some of my friends probably thought I was weird. I know, was it my sister? I think probably one of my sisters. Yeah, my sister Earlene. She's like, "You always listening to stuff." Yeah, I mean, I enjoy it. I enjoyed it because I needed to change something in me. And I knew how this negative outlook on myself was affecting me. And if I wanted to get better, I had to let an outside influence change how I felt Because if I could have fixed it, I would have already fixed it. And obviously, I didn't have the answer. And so I began to search for how to get rid of this negative feeling I had about myself. And so I just fed myself. I mean, it was times where I would just listen to stuff while I slept, positive stuff while I slept. And I would read positive stuff. And so I would listen to, whether it's YouTube or still to this day, like this is a habit that I have. Like I have a maintenance company, and when I used to do all the work myself, I would literally download an audiobook or a YouTube or something, and I start working and I put my headphones in. And the whole time I'm working, I'm listening to stuff that helps feed me. And eventually, it helped me deal with fears that I had and overcoming those fears. And it was like, okay, I was planting these seeds of positivity, and yeah, I had this tree over here that was negative, but after a while, the positive seeds started to outgrow the negative stuff. And it really impacted my life. It really impacted the outlook on myself. And I'm not saying I'm perfect in any way, because I don't think anybody's perfect. I think I'll always have to listen to positive stuff. I'll always have to feed myself positive stuff. But I know it's impactful. And I know as an adopted kid, you have all these things that run through your head. And you can, not everybody, but you can see things from a negative perspective. But as I fed myself, I began to look at things differently. Instead of looking at being thrown away, I began to recognize how I was handed over, how my parents, could have aborted me, but my mother carried me for 9 months. And I was sharing this with somebody the other day, like that's not an easy thing to do. Like the changes to a woman's body and like the difficulties sleeping, and like there's difficulties in carrying a child. And my mother did that. And before I started planting these positive things in me, I did not recognize that. It was all woe is me. It was all about how things didn't work for me and how I was thrown away. And I didn't see the perspective of how difficult it was for my parents and how difficult it was for them to make that decision. But they made that decision with my best interests in their mind, because they wanted me to have an opportunity to be in a positive environment. And I don't know the environment that they were in. I don't know what they were going through at the time, but I do know that they took the time to go to those doctor's appointments. And I do know that childbirth is not easy. And I do know my mother and my father went through that. And I do know that they could have aborted me. Yeah, I could have been a statistic. But instead, I'm talking to you. And so it took time for me to change that mindset. And I don't know who's listening to this, but you could be an adult, you could be in your 20s, 30s, 40s, or 50s, and have never thought about the other side of it. That there's two sides to a coin. And that you don't know if they were trying to save you from a drug-infested environment, an abusive environment. You don't know if they were sick in some way and they just wanted to give you a better opportunity. And so I faced that fear of meeting my family because of the positive things I fed myself. And as I fed those positive things to myself, it helped change my outlook. and it helped change how I view things. And I wanted that change because I was just tired of feeling how I felt. And even today, like even in different aspects of my life, I want to become better. And so I just feed myself. I feed myself. I feed myself. And after a while, just like I can learn the lyrics of a song and know them by heart because I've listened to it a million times, I can feed myself positive stuff and it becomes a part of me. And I hope it becomes a part of you. And I've talked to not just people who are adopted, but I've talked to people who weren't adopted, because there are people who maybe grew up in the foster care system, and you went from foster home to foster home. I was talking to my sister the other day, and we had I was a baby, so I kind of remember like seeing her around, but my parents had a foster child, and she was like in her late teens when my parents had adopted us. And we lived in Tacoma, Washington. And she stayed there. And I haven't seen her in forever. But I put myself in her shoes, right? You're a late teen, and I don't know how many foster homes she'd been in. I honestly, I have no idea. And I haven't spoken to her in ever. But I just know that when we moved from Tacoma, Washington back to Pennsylvania, she stayed in Tacoma, Washington. And I'm assuming she built her life however she chose to build her life. And I don't know if she sees it as a positive or negative, but I know I tried to put myself in her shoes. I was talking to my sister this week. I was like, man, can you imagine like going from foster home to foster home and not being adopted? And then how that can affect you, and how that you can feel like nobody thought I was worth it. Right? Now, how could that, how can that impact your life? But then there's a flip side to that. And something that I've learned is that anything that has happened in my life, that I can view it as a positive. Like this might sound backwards, but I am so grateful I was adopted. I am so grateful. Even though it was a difficult experience, I am so grateful I was adopted. Why? Because I'm an encourager by nature. That's just who I am. If you know me personally, you know I'm an encourager by nature. And the fact that happened to me, it made me feed myself all this encouraging stuff. So when I have a friend or somebody that I might be talking to and they're going through something, I just have this reservoir of positive positive, how do I want to word this? I I have this reservoir of encouragement in me, right? And I get joy out of seeing someone else be encouraged. It literally brings joy to me. And if I don't go through all those days of not feeling like I was worth enough and feeling thrown away, I don't dig into how to better myself inside, and I can't give out the encouragement that I give out on from day to day. And instead of viewing all that as so negative, I thank God it happened to me, because it brought me to where I am right now. I'm not making this video without that happening to me. I started writing. I don't write without that happening to me. So my I guess I'll call her my foster sister from when I was like 2. I hope and pray that she's doing well, and I hope and pray that she views her life in a positive manner, and that she can help somebody else that's struggling in that same area. Because man, we're all humans, and we're all out here trying to just live the best we can. We all got struggles. I remember as a kid thinking, man, If I had this amount of money or that amount of money, everything would be great. Man, I know some rich people. I know some people with a lot of money. They're human just like you and me. I know some people that played professional sports. They're human just like you and me. I know some people that have planes and boats and beach houses and all kinds of stuff. And they're human beings just like me, you and me. And they go through ups and downs, and highs and lows. But as a kid, growing up, I thought, man, that would be fantastic. And yeah, it's fantastic to have the toys, but we're all humans. And so we all have things that we're working on within ourselves. And so I hope listening to my adoption journey and the things that I've gone through and I continue to go through, that hopefully you can pull something out for yourself, whether you're adopted or not, because you don't have to be adopted to have gone through something. I mean, we all do. So yeah, thanks for listening to me, and I'll talk to you soon.